To Module 6. This is about coordination and agreement among different processes in a distributed system. So this module mainly covers two different topics. First one is a set of algorithms to achieve mutual exclusion among a collection of processes so that they can coordinate their accesses to a shared resource. And then examine how an election algorithm can be implemented in a distributed system. That is, how a group of processes can agree on a new coordinator of their activities after the previous coordinator has failed. So we can go through these two different topics in detail. So these are the contents of this module. First one, 4 different algorithms to achieve distributed mutual exclusion, and then 2 different algorithms to elect a new coordinator. So for the sake of simplicity, we are taking some assumptions here. So before moving on to the topic, let us have a discussion on these assumptions. So the first assumption is that each pair of processes is connected by reliable channels. That is, although the underlying network components may suffer failures, the processes use reliable communication protocol that mask these failures. For example, it can mask the failure by retransmitting missing or corrupted messages. And also we assume that no process failure implies a threat to other processes' ability to communicate. That means that none of the processes depends on another to forward messages. Also, we assume that there's a failure detector associated with every process. So, a failure detector is a service that processes query about whether a particular process has failed. Usually, it is implemented by an object local to each process that runs a failure detection algorithm in conjunction with its counterpart at all other processes. So the object local to each process is called a local failure detector. And these failure detectors are usually implemented using timeouts. That is, each process P sends a P is here message to every other processes, and it does this every t seconds. The failure detector uses an estimate of the maximum message transmission time of d seconds. And if the local failure detector at process Q does not receive a P is here message within t plus d seconds of the last one, then it reports to Q that P is suspected. And if it subsequently receives a P is here message, then it reports to Q that P is okay. This is how it normally implemented. And the failure detector may not be necessarily accurate always. Most of the time we have to say that the failure detectors are unreliable. So an unreliable failure detector may produce one of two values when given the identity of a process. Those are unsuspected or suspected. So both of these results are hints which may or may not accurately reflect whether the process has actually failed. A result of unsuspected signifies that the detector has recently received evidence suggesting that the process has not failed. This, for example, a message was recently received from it. But of course, the process may have failed after that. A result of suspected signifies that the failure detector has some indication that the process may have failed. Just for example, it may be that no message from the process has been received for more than a nominal maximal length of silence. And the suspicion may be misplaced in some case. For example, the process could be functioning correctly but be on the other side of a network partition, or it could be running more slowly than expected. Such cases may be there. So on the other hand, in the case of a reliable failure detector, which is one that is always accurate in detecting process failure. So it answers a process query with either a response of unsuspected, which is just a hint, just like the case of an unreliable failure detector, that process working normally, or the second possible reply is failed. So a result of failed means that the detector has determined that the process has crashed. Another thing to be noted because of the inherent nature of the distributed system is that at any particular interval of time, communication between some processes may succeed while communication between others is delayed. Just for example, a failure of a router between two networks may mean that a collection of 4 processes is split into two different pairs, right? Such that intra-pair communication is possible over the respective network, whereas the inter-pair communication is not possible. This is known as network partition. Over a point-to-point network such as the internet, complex topologies and independent routing choices means that the connectivity may be asymmetric. That is, communication is possible from process P to process Q, but not vice versa. And also connectivity may also be intransitive. That is, communication is possible from P to Q and from Q to R, but we cannot communicate directly with R. So thus our reliability assumption entails that eventually any failed link or router will be repaired or circumvented. Anyway, the processes may not all be communicate at the same time. Now let us get into the core topic, that is distributed mutual exclusion and election. First let us go through distributed mutual exclusion and different algorithms for implementing the same. So as you know, distributed processes often need to coordinate their activities, right? If a collection of processes share a resource or a collection of resources, then often mutual exclusion is required to prevent interferences and ensure consistency when accessing the resources. And this is called critical section problem, and you are already familiar with this in operating system domain, right? So in a distributed system, however, neither the shared variables nor facilities supplied by a single local kernel can be used to solve it in general, because the nature of distributed system is different, right? We require a solution to distributed mutual exclusion, one that is based solely on message passing. A lot of issues are there in achieving this mutual exclusion. I will say one example. Suppose a set of users want to update a text file, and the simplest way for doing the same is allow them to access it only one at a time, right? So by requiring the editor to lock the file before updating. But in case of an NFS file server, the server is designed to be stateless, right? So no information is stored there, and therefore don't have any support for file locking. So because of this, Unix systems provide a separate file locking service implemented as a separate daemon to achieve this mutual exclusion. Another typical example which can illustrate the requirement of mutual exclusion in a distributed system is that consider a system monitoring the number of vacancies in a car park with a process at each entrance and exit that tracks the number of vehicles entering and leaving. So each process keeps a count of the total number of vehicles within the car park and displays whether or not it is full. So the processes must update the shared count of the number of vehicles consistently, right? Definitely there are different ways to achieve this. Anyway, the most convenient way is to the processes to be able to obtain mutual exclusion solely by communicating among themselves without the requirement of a separate server. So this is an example for mutual exclusion in a distributed environment. So we have a system of n processes pi, is 1, 2, etc. up to n, and those processes do not share any variables. So these processes access common resources, but they do so in a critical section only. For the sake of simplicity, we assume that there is only one critical section, and also we assume that the system is asynchronous, that processes do not fail, and that message delivery is reliable, so that any message sent is eventually delivered intact exactly once. Application level protocol for executing the critical section is as follows. It contains three different functions: enter, resource access, and exit. Enter is requesting access to enter into this critical section to access the shared resource. So it can be granted or blocked depending on the situation. So once the enter or request is granted, the resource, common resource can be accessed in the critical section, and once the accessing is finished, it can exit the critical section, so that other processes may now enter into critical section. And these are the two different essential requirements for mutual exclusion. First one, safety, named as ME1, which means that at most one process may execute in the critical section at any time. And the second condition is liveness, ME2, which means that request to enter and exit the critical section eventually succeeds. That means if a process enter into critical section, it should exit eventually. And also, if a new process requests for critical section, request for entering into critical section, it should be allowed the access eventually. It should not wait indefinitely. So condition ME2 implies freedom from both deadlock and starvation, right? A deadlock, as you know, would involve two or more processes becoming stuck indefinitely while attempting to enter or exit the critical section. And even without a deadlock, a poor algorithm might lead to starvation, that is, indefinite postponement of entry for a process that has requested it. So this absence of starvation can be called as fairness condition. Before moving on to the different algorithms for mutual exclusion, let us see how the performance of these algorithms can be evaluated. So performance of these different algorithms are evaluated based on three different criteria: bandwidth, client delay, and then throughput. So we can see one by one. Bandwidth is actually proportional to the number of messages sent in each entry and exit operations. So the total number of messages sent for entry and exit operation in a mutual exclusion algorithm. Like that, client delay, which is the delay incurred by a process at each entry and exit operation. So then the third one, the algorithm's effect upon the throughput of the system. So this is the rate at which the collection of processes as a whole can access the critical section. So normally we measure this effect using synchronization delay. So synchronization delay is actually delay between one process exiting the critical section and the next process entering it. So definitely throughput will be greater when the synchronization delay is shorter. Now let us go through different algorithms to implement this distributed mutual exclusion. So we are focusing on four different algorithms here: central server algorithm, ring based algorithm, and then an algorithm using multicast and logic clocks, then macOS voting algorithms. We can see one by one. The simplest method of achieving this distributed mutual exclusion is using a central server algorithm. So here we are employing a server to grant permission to access critical session. So if a process wants to enter into critical session, it will first request the server to get permission and will wait for a reply from it. And this reply will consist of a token signifying permission to enter the critical session. At the time of request, if no other process has the token at, then the server replies immediately, granting the token. Or else, if the token is currently held by another process, then the server does not reply but queues the request. And when a process exits the critical session, it sends a message to the server giving it back the token. At that time, the server will analyze its queue. If the queue of waiting process is not empty, then the server chooses the oldest entry in the queue, removes it, and replaces to the corresponding process. And the chosen process then holds a token. So you can see in the figure, we have four different processes, right? In the current situation, P2 requests for entering into critical session. So already server has a request from P4. So P2 also will be queued. And currently the token is with P3, right? And when P3 finishes its execution, it will release the token, so that the oldest entry in this queue will be serviced. So P4 will be granted the token. P1 does not currently require entry to the critical session. Now if we analyze whether the ME1 and ME2 are met, here we are using a token based system, right? So at any time only one process which holds the token can enter into critical session. So ME1 is met. Now what about ME2, liveness guarantee? So here the server uses first in first out queue to service a request, right? So definitely the different processes are serviced in the order in which they are requested. So no problem of starvation or deadlock here. So ME2 also met. And the main drawback here is that the server may become a performance bottleneck for the system as a whole. Failure of the server will affect the system as a whole, right? This is the main drawback here. And let us remove this central point of control, and we have another algorithm, that is ring-based algorithm. So one of the simplest ways to achieve mutual exclusion between a set of n processes without requiring an additional process is to arrange them in a logical ring. This requires only that each process Pi has a communication channel to the next process in the logical ring, that is Pi plus 1 mod n. The idea is that exclusion is conferred by obtaining a token in the form of a message passed from a process to process in a single direction. Say for example, clockwise direction around the ring. The ring topology may be unrelated to the physical interconnections between the underlying computer. We are connecting those in a logical ring. So if a process does not require to enter into critical session, when it receives the token, then it immediately forwards the token to its neighbor. And if a process that requires a token waits until it receives it but retains it, to exit the critical session, the process sends the token to its neighbor. Just for example, suppose here process P2 want to enter into critical session and currently the token is with P4. So P2 will wait until the token is received by it. Whereas P4, after finishing its critical session, it will pass the corresponding token into P5. Since P5 don't want to enter into critical session, it will pass on to P6, etc. And finally, it will reach this P2 event. In between, if any other process want to enter into critical session, it will enter as soon as it receives the token. So P2 has to wait until it receives the corresponding token. This is how this algorithm works. So here also these conditions ME1 and ME2 are met, right? So we are using a token based system. So only the process which hold the token will enter into critical session. So ME1 is met. And what about ME2? ME2 also will be met because the token will be passed to the ring. So any process which requests will be received this token eventually. It can enter into critical session. And anyway, this requests are not processed in the happen before order, right? That is, they are not serviced in the order in which they are raising the request, but they are serviced in the order in which they are arranged in the logical ring. The main drawback of this algorithm is that this algorithm continuously consumes network bandwidth, except when a process is inside the critical session. All other situations, this token will be circulated around the ring, right? So the processor sends messages around the ring even when no process requires entry into the critical session. So the delay experienced by a process requesting entry to the critical session is between 0 messages and n messages. 0 messages in case when it has just received the token, and n messages when it has just passed on the token. To exit the critical session requires only one message, right? Just pass on the token to the next neighbor. The synchronization delay between one process exit from the critical section and the next process entry into the critical session is anywhere from 1 to n messages depending on the position of token currently. Just for example, suppose P2 want to enter into critical session. So it will wait for the token, and suppose the token is currently held by P1. In that case, the synchronization delay is negligible, just one link transfer is enough. Suppose P2 want to enter, but the token is already with P3. This much delay will be there to synchronize the corresponding request, right? So depends on the position of the token currently, the synchronization delay will be varied. The next two algorithms you can see in the next session. Thank you.